All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Rise Urban Nation podcast. Today we got special guest, Rodney Lawson. You know, I met this brother in is it Speaker? What's it? Why am I forgetting the name
Speaker
of where we
Hub.
just
Speaker Hub.
Speaker Hub?
Yes.
And wait, how did you get introduced? I didn't even ask you that story. How did you get introduced to Speaker Hub?
Uh Actually, Ron reached out. He sent me a email message. He must have found me on
Okay.
LinkedIn and sent me an email message. Said, "Hey, I am hosting this free conference. Would you like to
Uh-huh.
be a part of it?" And I said, "Wait a minute. Oh, that's right up the alley of what I'm doing." And
Yeah.
so I joined in and really, really liked what I saw. And most importantly,
Uh-huh.
I think that he has a tool that would really help
Mm-hmm.
me. And so that's how I ended up on a call with you. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah, and I remember from the time you entered the call, your charisma, the way you spoke, and then some of the things I was like, man, and then I was like, all right, who's this guy? Like, oh, okay, I gotta have him on the pod,
I
right?
appreciate that, man.
And then so we was chopping it up earlier today, and you know everything that I just learned about you in that short time from just being a former corporate executive.
Hmm.
You know, now you like a community leader and advocate. Your journey just has taken you from being a leader in a multi-million-dollar operation in corporate America to make a meaningful impact in communities through the work that you do, and I can't wait to learn more about that. And just for people just to learn from you. So today we're gonna learn how Rodney leveraged his experience, overcame personal and professional challenges, and why he's so passionate about creating, you know, representation and opportunity for others. Just like, you know, a lot of you know my journey in doing it, and then I shared it a little bit with him, and then we just automatically clicked. I want to say we
Yes.
automatically clicked. Your story was my story, and today we're gonna make his story.
Love it. Love it.
So Rodney, let's start at the beginning. Tell us a bit about your background
Okay.
and how you got started in your career.
Interesting story. Throughout high school, I just knew I was going to the NFL, right? I was a pretty good football player.
Mm-hmm.
Played ball in the Western Pennsylvania area, small town called Beaver Falls, where Joe Namath went to school.
Oh
We won
wow.
the championship. I was selected to play in the Pennsylvania Ohio All-Star football game my senior year, and just knew that was going to be my course, and ended up
Mm-hmm.
tearing my knee. And I've always said that
Wow.
if I had a knee injury, that was probably it because I enjoyed other sports also. My first sport was martial arts. So
Okay.
I have a black belt in two different forms, two different Japanese art forms, Shotokan and Ishinryu. I've competed in probably 400 light contact karate tournaments throughout my life. Started when I was
Mm-hmm.
8. Me, my older brother, and my father, and always loved that competitive spirit. But then when karate, I couldn't do that anymore because of my knee. I tore my
Mm-hmm.
MCL, and then football was out of the way. I immediately went into the corporate world, at a really young age, and I could still utilize that competitive spirit, right? And so that's how it
Mm.
started. But I got to share this with you. It wasn't easy because the person that you see today is not the person that I was back then. I needed a lot of work, man. I talked with
Mm.
ebonics, broken English, colloquialisms, you name it. I was a product out of the hip hop culture. And,
Yeah.
I'll never forget, my first stint in the corporate world. I went through training. I was a telephone sales rep for, Fortune 100 company, telecommunications company.
Yeah.
And after the first week of training, my supervisor asked us to write down two goals, a short-term goal and a long-term goal. Long-term goal, I put down I wanted to be a vice president. She called me in on a
Yeah.
one-on-one. She took the piece of paper out with my goals on it. She said, let's look at your goals. And she said, why did you write this down as your long-term goal? And I said, because I love this environment. It's the first time I'm working in a comfortable environment. It's not hot in the summer. It's not cold in the winter. And I get to wear a shirt and tie. So I want to move up. And she asked a couple more questions. And then she finally got tired of beating around the bush, Tyrell. And she said to me, and I'll never forget her face. I'll never forget her facial expression on the other side of that conference room table when she said, Rodney, you might want to choose something that's a little more realistic.
Wow.
Yeah. At that moment, either one or two things can happen, right? Because it's a pivotal moment, right? Either
Mm-hmm.
you are going to be crushed and lose your confidence, or you're going to ball your fist up and fight back.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I just recently learned that I am what you call a rejection overcomer. And we'll get into that a little
Mm.
bit later on, based off of my adverse childhood experience and,
Right.
going through therapy and all that. So I figured out, I learned that I'm a rejection overcomer. And a part of being a rejection overcomer, you don't like to deal with rejection. And so when that
Mm-hmm.
happens, either one of three things will occur. You will either run from it, you will stick your head in the sand and ignore it, or you will, number three, you will fight it. And at
Mm.
that moment, it was like balling my fist up and fighting it. And I said to her, I didn't say what I want to say because I would have gotten fired.
Yeah.
But I did say to her, you asked me to write my goals down on that piece of paper. And that's exactly what I did. With all due respect, you do whatever as though you feel as though you need to do with that piece of paper, but you'll never, ever get me to change one single word on it. Can I go back
Mm.
to my desk and finish making my sales? She said yes.
Mm.
Now, let me fast forward. She watched me in that company. In the 14 years that I spent in that company, I was promoted 14 times in 12
Mm-hmm.
years. I went from a sales rep on the phone. When I resigned from that company, I was director over their international location, their most complex location. I had 687 employees under my direction from over
Mm-hmm.
50 different countries around the world. And we took customer service calls in 10 different languages and made outbound sales calls in 10 different languages. Now I say that to say this. I don't blame her because what she was looking
Mm-hmm.
at again is not what you're looking at today. I needed a lot of
Yeah.
work. But there are two things that I will say, Terrell, that will make people successful. Number one, they have to keep an open mind for development.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll elaborate on that a little later on. Let me give you the second one first. The second one is that they have to have a burning purpose for what it is they want to
Yeah.
accomplish. Okay, now let me go back to the first one and I'll elaborate on each of them. So keeping an open mind for development. Okay. I
Mm-hmm.
knew I needed communication work. I needed professional dress work. At that time, I only owned one business suit, maybe two
Yeah.
shirts, a couple of ties. That was it. And so what I did was I made it a goal of mine early on that I wanted to outdress not my supervisor and the supervisors. I wanted to outdress the managers in the office. And so I would take 10% of my gross paycheck every 2 weeks and I had to apply it toward my professional wardrobe. I would put a
Mm-hmm.
suit on layaway. I would shop at TJ Maxx, Marshalls, all of those inexpensive stores, and I would get the 80, 70,
Mm-hmm.
$100 suits. But I would find a tailor and I would take that suit to the tailor and I would spend another $50 to $60 to get it tailored to me, to my body style, my body type. And that suit would look like $1,000 suit. And so I
I
started
love
building
that.
my wardrobe that way. I would get my shirts dry cleaned. I would work on my communication. And
Mm-hmm.
when I finally did get promoted to a supervisor, the goal for me was to take 2 developmental classes. That was the goal for your performance review and all of that stuff to, just meet the expectations. Man, those classes were free. I took 11 classes my first year as a
Mm-hmm.
supervisor. I'm talking about frontline leadership 1, frontline leadership 2, effective interviewing skills, performance management skills, how to coach for optimal performance. I mean, you name it. I was in those classes taking. This was like, y'all giving this to me for free. And so I just kept
Mm-hmm.
developing myself. But the key thing I think, that was really, really brought everything home was I had the right behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that behavior is what drove those two things when I talk about keeping an open mind so that I can develop myself and having a burning purpose. Now, the reason that you have to
Mm-hmm.
have that second step, the burning purpose, is because two things are going to happen and they happen in life
What's
to
that?
everybody.
Yeah.
People, number one,
Mm-hmm.
and number two, circumstances. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
People will tell you all the things that you cannot do, that you should not do based off of, yes, based off of their own level of competence in that particular area. And
Yeah.
I'll just give you a small example. At one point, I ended up running a call center operation in Guyana, South America, for almost 2 years. The company actually commuted me from the Maryland, D.C. area back and forth,
Yeah.
yeah, to run this operation in Guyana. And when I first told my mom that I was gonna, take a job doing that, this was
Mm-hmm.
a week after 9/11. And my mom was
Mm.
like, boy, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. They blowing up the Trade Center and all of that. You can't. If I lived off of my mother's experience and her fears, I would not be the person that
Mm-hmm.
I am today. So
Yeah.
people, right? People. And then there's going to be circumstances. It's not the
Yeah.
right time. Well, when is the right time? Or you set off to do something and then something happens, right? You got to keep
Mm-hmm.
moving. You got to keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
So again, people and circumstances. So I had those two things. I applied those two things and I started to excel in the corporate world. And I did all of that with a high school diploma
Yeah.
because yeah. When I went from supervisor to manager, I had relocated to a different city. Didn't know
Mm-hmm.
anyone in that city. No cousins, relatives, family members, friends, no one. Just packed up, uh, you know, my family and we just bolted, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It was a lot of learning,
Yeah. I can
that
only
took place.
imagine
Yeah.
all of the challenges that came along the way. There's so
Hmm.
many different impactful things from that story that I'll just love. Some of the things that resonate with me was, I often tell this to, when, us as adults, well, students, adults, sometimes we have limiting beliefs, right? And it's
Hmm.
based on our circumstances, right? Um, and sometimes adults put those limiting beliefs on, the next generation, and they say,
Absolutely.
oh, well, they always telling you what you can or cannot do based on what the circumstances of their fears and realities, and their vision. But sometimes, I'm a man of faith. God gives you a vision. They didn't give that person a vision, so you have to walk in faith in your
Love it.
vision and your
Yeah.
purpose, so that you can continue to move mountains and build what you've been
Yes.
called to
Yes.
do,
Yes.
the work that you've been called to do. So, and that's what you leaned into, and I love that you did this all on a high school diploma, right?
Yeah, man.
And I'm also sitting with, like, I didn't know that you was in the DMV area, because I'm originally from DC too, so there's some connection points
Oh, I
there.
didn't know that.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
what period of time were you in the
I
DC
was in the
area?
DC area, actually Baltimore first, from
Yeah,
86 to about 91. I moved away working for different companies. And then I ended up
uh-huh,
moving back to not that area, but the DMV area, Fort Washington,
uh-huh,
Maryland. I ended up buying a house there back
yeah,
in 1999. And then I was
yeah.
there until about 2002 and then ended up moving to, Florida.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we only had a small brief over period, because I was there from, my when I was 7, which was in the early 90s, to
Uh-huh.
or eight, no, late 80s to like 1996, when I graduated and left, and then I didn't come back, because I changed my circumstances and world
Hmm.
around me when I came out to California, so which led to my projection in my career and my life.
Okay.
The other thing that I love about your journey that really stuck with me is just your tenacity and your grit, and it's like, I'm
Hmm.
going to, despite what these people say, I'm going to do this, because I was labeled with ADHD growing up, and people said, oh, he can't do this, he's never going to graduate from school. And I managed to graduate with 2 degrees, and then move up in my educational career. And for me, some of my motivations in life is my Nigerian dad, who's always about, my friends, study your
Mm.
books, get your education, and they're a big fan of education, because that's what they believe was going to be
Hmm.
the thing that was going to get us out of our circumstances, get you out of the hood, so you don't have to be here where we
Hmm.
are at, and so forth. And No, I didn't chose the career path they want me to choose, but that's a whole nother story.
Right.
but can you share a little bit about your family background and how it shaped your views and your career and your success?
Yeah. A little bit different from yours.
Uh,
I grew up in a household with an alcoholic, abusive, um, addictive personality father.
mm,
And it shaped me in a way that it taught me what I didn't want to be. What I, you know,
mm-hmm.
I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to say it. There are times when we got our gas and electricity cut off in the wintertime, and you can't stay in the
Mm,
house, and we'd have to go stay with relatives because the toilet bowl water would freeze up. It's so cold, right?
mm,
Um, and it wasn't because the thing that bothered me so much, Terrell, wasn't because he wasn't making money. Like he worked for, a major automobile um, uh, company.
yeah.
But he would just go and he would give my mother the bill money on Friday, and then he would go out and he would gamble. And then
Mm-hmm.
probably, I don't know, 80% of the time he would come back later on that
Mm-hmm.
night and get into an argument and fight with my mother because they would fight over the money that he had given her to pay the bills because he had lost
Mm,
on the other, right? And this was like, this was like a weekly thing for a while. And so I didn't want to
mm,
be that way. So
yeah.
I developed certain values. Like one of the things I can share with you and the listening audience is that I've never taken a single sip of alcohol in my life. No
Mm,
champagne, beer, nothing. I won't do it. Well, now I don't have anything against it, for other people. I've been around the best and I love to party, especially in the DC area, the DMV area. Yeah,
yeah.
I hit a club with the best of them,
Yeah.
but just alcohol. Alcohol, drugs, that's just never been a part of me. And it's because I've seen the
Yeah.
demise of what it can do. And I just never wanted it to affect me. And then I also utilize it to my advantage because, when you're in the
Mm,
corporate world, there's a lot of pressure to do things, right? Especially alcohol when you go to these, recognition ceremonies and these events and all of these things. And for me, I get to sit back and observe, right? And I get to
mm,
learn and I get to watch and I get to pick up different things. And people have a tendency to share a little bit more, you know, and I could ask questions and get an understanding on things. And so I utilize a lot of that to my advantage.
yeah.
So it actually helped, in a lot of ways. But again, I don't frown on anyone else that do it. It just
Yeah.
wasn't for me. But those are my values that I established because I didn't want to live my life like my parents did growing up. So my drive
Yeah.
was a little bit different in that setting.
Yeah. And something that we spoke about earlier and something that I really admired about you too, about the values piece is, your take on values when it comes to leadership in corporations. And, this is a hot topic right now because we just had the presidential elections. I'm
hmm
not going to shy away from that.
hmm
Um, it seems like America has, for the most part, those who have voted chosen the values that they want to see in their leader.
hmm
Um, although some may say that they don't choose the leader based on their values, they choose the leader based on their execution. And a little bit of my philosophy on that is that you can't just look at a leader based on their execution. You have to look at them on their values too. Because I'll give you this as an example. Like there's a guy that I know that got promoted in the organization, and he's the kind of guy he whips everybody into shape, but he gets the project on time and under budget every time, no matter what. We may not say have the same team there when he's done, but it gets done. Morale is done. The same team isn't intact, and um, there's some cost to that. I'm not going to go into all the specifics of the cost to that, but we don't inherently look at the cost to it until it becomes too costly,
A
right?
problem. Yes. Yep.
and then now we have to address it, whether you know you get lawyers involved, HR, whatever happens, right?
Hmm.
And it was like, oh, you got to change your behaviors, and then that's when we make it the values issue.
Well,
Give me your take on
that's
that.
when companies hire people like me to come in and work with someone like that. Or yeah.
Yeah. So give me your take on values. I mean, you're in the midst of what you're seeing as well. So give me your,
Well,
I go ahead.
let me share this with you. A part of my discovery was finding out what my purpose was, right? And your purpose is made up of four things: your pull
Yeah.
passion, your natural abilities, your acquired skills, and your origin story. Now, my origin story I kind of shared is that I'm a rejection overcomer, right? But
Yeah.
I'll for sake of time, I'll just talk about my pull passion. My pull passion is, what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that makes you angry or make you overly excited or happy or whatever the case may be? And for me, my pull passion is, I am what you call an injustice equalizer. That means that I like to see things
Mm.
fair. I like to see things
Mhm.
right. I like to see things equitable. And when I
Mhm.
don't see that, then the strategical part of me and the adaptability within me, these are all skill sets that I developed by growing up in a household with an alcoholic and abusive father, right?
Mm.
Those are good points that I got from my dad, because you don't want to make mistakes. So you watch, you observe, you strategically pivot, right? So these are skill sets that I
Mhm.
developed, and they became a part of my whole overall value system. Now, for my father and myself, the single most disrespected moment of my life came from my father. Not on one
Mm.
occasion, but two occasions.
Mhm.
One as a teenager and another as an adult. And so for me, the thing that drives me is that I do not like seeing followers being led by disrespectful and unsavory leaders. Because
Mm.
in the 30 some odd years that I've been leading people in a leadership position, management position, I've never treated one single person with a lack of dignity and respect. Never. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't
Mhm.
hold people accountable. Doesn't mean that I haven't had to terminate people. I've terminated a lot of people. But at the end of the day, they always have their dignity and their respect for me. And this is regardless of how they treated me, because I've been called out of my name. I've been called all kinds of things at times when I've had
Mhm.
to terminate individuals. But I still not divert to treating them in a disrespectful manner, because I know how it feels, right?
Mhm.
That I got from my father. And it wasn't until recently that I had to learn that it was a gift as opposed
Mhm.
to a curse. Because it
Yeah.
took me a long time to get over my father. And
Mhm.
it wasn't until, working with my therapist and that I really, learned that whole dynamic of me. Right. My therapist
Mhm.
said, wow, she said, you've gone all of these years, you never treated, and you managed thousands of people over the years. I said, yeah, absolutely. She said, you do realize you got that from your father, right? And
Mm.
that's when it hit me, and I got emotional, because at that point it went from anger to, now I'm feeling guilty, because for all these years I harbored
Mm.
this inner feeling of, you did this to me. I'm this way because of you, or I don't like this because of you, because it was a negative. But she
Mhm.
flipped it on me. And this was my therapist. She flipped it on me and she said, no, you treated all of these people. Think about the number of people you touched in a positive way. Think about the number of people that you taught to lead people the right way by being
Mm.
respectful, because of what you got from your father. And so what I realized at that moment, Terrell, is this: it wasn't what he did. Yeah, excuse me, I'm an emotional person. It wasn't what he
No,
did.
no.
It wasn't
Yeah.
what he did to me. It was what he did for me.
Mm.
And so that's how I look at it now. And so
Uh-huh.
now, God rest his soul, my dad passed in 2014. We buried him late 2014. We buried him in 2015. And now, I got to work through like the guilt part, right?
Yeah.
But I'm getting there. I'm getting there, you know.
Yeah. And the thing that I love about it, I'm loving from, my journey and, because my biological dad was never a part of my life. Like,
Mm,
he was in and out of jail. He wasn't, a father figure. I
mm-hmm,
got raised by my Nigerian stepdad, who I receive as a father. But he was a provider. He wasn't the I'm gonna hug you and I'm gonna hold you type dad. I, I'm gonna go out, work, pay the bills, and then you better in the discipliner, right? Like he wasn't. And I was a kid that needed the words of affirmation. I needed the hugs, the loves, and all that stuff. So if I
mm-hmm,
couldn't get it from home, I got it from the streets. So even though I had a 2-parent household, I still went to the streets because
mm-hmm,
that's where I got the love, the hug,
mm-hmm.
the holds,
Yep.
the daps, those reaffirmations that I needed in my development as a young man. And from hearing you talk about that, I realized the reason why we're able to grow to the men that we are today is from these lessons. So the blessing was in the lesson, and
Yes.
sometimes you need those lessons to, good or bad, to become what you need to be and to fulfill your purpose in life and go through life to build what it is that you know whether you spiritual or not, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, has called you to do. And you need
Mm-hmm,
all of that. You need all of that to become that. And so I'm thankful and grateful for it. And then I don't shy away from it. And I try to not run away from the pain, but run towards it so I can learn what is this teaching me? What is this? What am I needing to get from this to become what I need to become? Right. Another thing you said that you talked about pivot, right? And
mm-hmm,
every journey has those pivotal moments, its pivotal moments.
mm-hmm.
Could you share a major challenge you faced in your career and what it taught you about yourself and leadership?
Wow. Um, I faced so many challenges. One, just being a black male
Mm,
in the corporate world,
speak on that. Woo!
because there are things that you cannot do, even though you see other people doing them, because the accountability for you is different.
Yeah.
And that's something that I would teach us, as we would hire, minorities. I make sure that they understand the rules of the do's and don'ts. And I would tell them like, look, you're an adult. I don't tell you what to do because I don't want anyone telling me what to do. I'm just going to say that if this happens, here's the position you're going to put yourself in, and you're going to leave me no other alternative but to take this action over here. So when it's presented in front of you, you got one or two roads you can take. And depending on that road, that's going to determine where you go. Right. And so I
Mm,
tell them that on the front end so that at least when they're faced with it, right? And it's one of those, kind of fleshly things, right? Because it's, either you're
mm-hmm.
going to feed the flesh or you're going to feed the spirit, right?
Mm.
If you're feeding the spirit, you're good. But when you get to feeding the flesh, whether it's, we want to go out drinking, we want to do this, we want to do, and you're making these bad decisions, or it's, um, anything that's unsavory that that it could lead to, but you're thinking in that moment, I want to
Mm-hmm.
satisfy myself in that moment. Um,
Yeah.
you have to be willing to suffer the consequences of what may come along with that. And so for me, it was
Yeah.
always, let me, and it wasn't easy because there were times when I couldn't do that, or I chose, the flesh, right? And,
Mhm.
I made some mistakes. But let me circle back to there's so many stories I could share with you, but I'm going to share this one with
Yeah.
you. I remember when I kept bumping my head against the ceiling to get promoted to director. Okay. I was a senior
Yeah.
manager and I had, in my eyes, proven that I was the best senior manager in the company and should be next in line for the next director position. And
Mhm.
some of that is because I'll give you some facts. We started this office from the ground up. We had 90 days to hire 9 managers, 55 supervisors, and 1,000 sales
Wow.
agents. And we pulled it off.
Ooh.
Now, at this location, I was the number 2 person in charge. I was a senior manager and I reported to the director of that location. But
Yeah.
when my director got promoted, I wasn't the person selected to take over the location as a director. They brought someone else in. And that
Yeah.
did not happen once. It happened twice. And
Yeah.
then I applied for a position in another location as a director and I did not get that. So 3 times. Now on that third time, the difficult part was, I had been working at this location for about 3 years and everybody in the office knew, they just knew that that job was mine. And so the hardest thing for me when I was told that I wasn't going to get it and they were going to announce it, 48 hours later is going into the office and looking at all of those faces. And now, mind you, this office was probably about, I want to say 90% black or minority. Here I am black. Here, a lot of them have watched me at this location lead in these profound way, get these results that other senior managers hadn't gotten. And at one of the largest locations in the company. And I knew that if I was going to stay with the company, I would have to get my mind ready. And when I was told I didn't get the position, I said, listen, this stings, um, gotta process this. And, we'll circle back, and talk next week is what, the senior VP told me when he, informed me that he was bringing someone else in to take the job.
Mhm.
And I thought really close about resigning at that point. But then I thought about all of the faces and all of the minorities that I had developed at that location. And I had told them over and over and over again, you don't quit, you don't quit, you don't quit. But I knew it was going to be difficult to face them because I was going to hear, man, that's messed up. You should have got that job, blah, blah, blah. So I developed this statement in my mind, Tyrell. I said, every time I hear that, if I stay with the company, I'm going to say, it just wasn't my time. Don't worry about me, but I'm going to get mine. You watch. Just watch. Watch what I do. Okay.
Mhm.
And so they announced it. I heard it from, I can't tell you how many of my employees said that, right?
They probably was on you
Oh
like
my
white on rice.
God.
Like they
Yes.
like, man, you gonna just sit down, let
Yeah.
this man. I ain't
Yeah.
gonna work for him.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna give him hell, Rodney. Da da da.
But this is what I did, Tyrell. I met with our senior vice president. I said, listen, I said, I understand the decision and you will get 100% of my support. But here's what I need from you and from him. I need for you guys to give me what I need to get to that level. And he said to me, you got it. 5 months later, I was promoted to director at my own
Mm,
location. And this is how God works, right? It was right back in the DMV area where I had migrated from years ago.
nice.
So it was so much of a blessing,
Uh-huh.
and because I stayed the course, because I didn't give up, it wasn't just, um, and then here's something else that really happened with that. The senior vice president said to me, you're going to learn from this guy. And I'm thinking, in your mind, you're like, what can I learn from him? Not really, but like, I mean, come on, all of the people are listening to me. I'm running things. I've been running things for years, and
Mhm.
the other director looked to me for stuff. So It was like, really? But what he taught me was how to win politically. That was something I did not
Mm.
know. And that's why God kept me there in that position, in that role. I knew how to lead people at a
Mm.
phenomenal level. I knew how to promote people. I had an eye as far as looking for talent. I would surround myself with people that were more talented than me, right? People that were enhanced in areas that I did not like to do or did not want to do or could not do, right? That's part of my secret. But what I
Mhm.
did not know is all of the interworkings of the political aspect. And so when this guy came, I learned that from him so that when I got promoted to the director position in 4 months, I took that most complex office from the bottom to the top office in the company. Four
Mhm.
months. Performance wise, I knew what to do, but I didn't have a
Mhm.
clue when it came to playing a political role to get exposure, bring positive exposure to the office so that
Mhm.
when this award is given, it's given off of not just the merit of the numbers, but everybody's saying, yeah, they deserve it. They deserve it. They deserve it.
Mhm.
So it was really a blessing, man.